Hey everybody, I am Dave Swartz and welcome to another episode of Dose of Dave. So right off the top, before I get into what I want to talk about this week, I just wanted to give an awesome shout out to my buddy Terry Mayo, friend and fellow creator in comics. He's done an amazing job with his Kickstarter campaign for a comic book that he and I are working on called Buddy, which is basically Milo and Otis meets The Exorcist. So it's just surpassed $9,000 on Kickstarter, guys. $9,000. It's insane. And actually, he's rounding the corner to 10 with 24 hours, actually less than 24 hours to go now. So I'm going to put the link to Buddy down into the description so you guys can go check that out, check out that campaign, and make sure that you get some of that awesome swag in the first issue before time runs out in, like, I think 22 hours, 23 hours or so. So again, congratulations to Terry Mayo and Buddy. Also, Confederate Monster, in related news, has done very well. It just surpassed 8,000 just this past week. So, and I'm very happy to say that the campaign has been a humongous success, and we're going to be closing it out here pretty soon, though. So if you don't have, if you haven't pledged yet to the campaign, and you want to make sure that you get it before it closes, I'm going to probably close it down next week. I haven't made up my mind yet, but I really want to encourage everybody to go check out Confederate Monster on IndieGoGo. The link is down below before that one closes as well. Okay, so today, as you can see from the title, we are talking about expectations and communication. So from far as back as I could remember, one of the things that I've always been taught is communication, making sure that not only are you properly explaining yourself, but then you're properly understanding what the other person is saying. And I've often heard the term, communication is the key to a happy relationship. Not only a happy relationship with your spouse, but with your coworkers, with your boss, with your friends, with your, anybody else in your life that you interact with, that you have a rapport with, and whom you have to in ways deal with, because sometimes there are people in your life you just don't necessarily want to deal with because they're very different from you. They have a very different value structure. However, they may be your boss, or they may be your coworker, or they may even be your family member, and you have to interact with them. So proper communication is a good way in order to make sure that those types of interactions go smoothly, right? Now, the other aspect about this interrelationship between us humans that I think is often kind of overlooked is managing expectations. This is something that comes from my work as a creative director. I was taught early on that I needed to make sure that I understood how to properly manage the expectations of my team, as well as properly manage the expectations of my boss. So, it's another aspect of communication that when the two go, together, it really, I think, makes for a great, interaction with whomever it may be, even if you, don't share the same value structure, or you don't see eye to eye with somebody. Now, for me as a creative director, I had to make sure that not only were the people in my team on the same page and that all of their expectations were met, but that I understood what the expectations were of me so that I could, manage the expectations of other people. So, if you're not, I would say listening is one of the biggest things that we need to do more as a collective, because too many of us are just either too focused on our own little world, or because of that, even in a back and forth, a communication, you're only thinking about what you're going to say next, or you're just kind of pontificating about what this person is saying to you in a way that distracts you from what they're actually trying to communicate themselves. Without an ability to truly listen, and trust me, I go through this all the time myself, where I'm, having a conversation with someone, and for whatever reason, I'm either daydreaming about something, or I'm thinking about what they're saying, and it makes me think of something else, and it sends me to another place in my past that then I want to communicate to that person because I would like to share my experience. We all have this feeling like I want to share my experience because in my mind, since we're all one at the end of the day, we're not separate beings really. We want to share data. We want to communicate to one another. We want to share in a way our experiences to grow our own individualistic perspective. Now, when it comes to, expectations and communication, that's another thing that we need to think about. We need to think about our own ego. We need to think about how we fit within this, back and forth. And oftentimes, you're not the most important person in the room, or your opinion isn't the most important opinion. You have equal things to learn, I think, from nearly every person that you come across. One of the things I didn't listen to, shouldn't say that. One of the things I read earlier this week was a story about, I think it was in Sweden, where they have regular libraries. I'm sure they have regular libraries. But they have people libraries where you can go and sit and just rent out a person and have them sit with you and tell you their life story. And you can ask them questions. I mean, who knows how truthful their answers are going to be. I would hope they're as truthful as possible. But just the idea of being able to go to a place and say, I'm really interested in the life of what it takes to be a chef. So I'm going to rent out a world-renowned chef to come and tell me his life story or her life story. That's a really cool idea, I think. And I think it's cool mainly because oftentimes those stories are not going to be, start from A and go right to B. Oftentimes you're going to find a story that is, woven quite eccentrically. I think that many of us go through different paths that we didn't expect, and those paths lead us to other paths that then ultimately create the world, create the life that we're looking to live. So I think in that way, broadening your perspective, not being so fixated and focused on your own personal experience, will help you, will aid you in being able to truly listen to what that other person has to say to you. One of the things that I do for fun, but also to help me practice this listening thing, is to actually visualize what that other person is going through as if you were them, right? So like put yourself in that person's shoes, right? And actually, as they're, explaining the story, enact the story in your mind and follow along as if you were reading a book, right? And see how I kind of put that all together? I wanted to make sure that, this idea of me actually being them or being inside their shoes is visualized. Because as soon as it's visualized, then it's materialized and it's made manifest within your perspective. And you can actually start to think in terms of their own perspective. I recently this week had many miscommunications and mismanagement of expectation. And some of it on my behalf, some of it on the other person's behalf. Again, it's usually how it happens. But it led to a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, a lot of frustration, self-doubt. Also, I think a challenge of perspective, because you have a vision of, not only who people are in your life, but also who you are as a person. And I think in those moments, you tend to, you have self-doubt because you tend to question, you're like, wait, like, are they right or am I right? Like, I'm not entirely sure. And sometimes for a lot of us, it's difficult to tell. And for even more of us, I think it's really difficult to tell. And those are the type of people that are easily manipulated into doing things that they don't want to do, or to thinking in ways that they don't want to think. And there's nuance all in between. But, for me, I was challenged to of my own perspective, and I was forced to kind of take a step back and do my best to go within and ask myself, what do I actually think about these things? How do I actually feel? Um, all of my life, I've always tried to think about all the other people around me and manage their expectations so that everybody is happy, even if I'm not happy. And that's not good. I've sort of come around to this idea rather recently. I'm sad to say, 35 years old. But everything happens at the time that it's ready to happen, right? Not every single flower grows at the same rate. Not every single, thing grows at the same rate and develops at the same rate. Everything needs its own proper time and context in order to develop properly. So for me, I feel as though for a long time I've devoted too much of my own wants and needs and the thoughts that are considered in a lot of the decisions that I make are largely dictated by how other people are going to see me or think about me or react to what I'm doing. I, on the other hand, have had many friends, still have many friends, who I know for a fact they don't give an F what other people think about the decisions that they make and the things that they do. And that's okay. I mean, again, we all are different. We all are different for a reason. We all are here experiencing completely different lives in order to collect a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different experiences, a lot of different data to then coalesce into overall conscious existence. So in this whole, pantheon of communication and expectation and, managing these types of things, not only for those that are around us, but for ourselves, and going within and actually taking the time and doing the work to connect to who you really are and what you really believe and what you really think, to then make that solid, to make that made manifest. If you don't spend the time, if you don't invest into doing this practice, it's far easier for you to fall into these periods of disillusionment, confusion, not entirely sure if you can trust yourself. Lots of doubt, which is not a good place for the brain to sustain it. We should always be, I think, striving for more of a harmonious state of mind rather than settling for stress, anxiety, fear, confusion, etc. So, I guess the only other thing that I would say about communication and expectation that I haven't already talked about is that these are all based on value structures and value systems where we wouldn't have the need for, I think we wouldn't necessarily have a major issue or a conflict when it came to communication and expectations if we were much more connected to the all, connected to who we all are. Because I think at that moment, when you truly realize this other person is completely different from me, they have a completely different value structure, I can put myself into that value structure and do my best to understand where they're coming from. And that in and of itself will, I think, negate any need for you to have a personal reaction to it or a negative ego reaction to it. It just is what it is. And if your expectations are never, set to a level where you can be disappointed, I mean, if you are constantly going into situations with the feeling that I am open to anything that happens in this situation, good or bad, because either way, I'm either going to learn something about myself or I'm going to express something about myself that someone else will learn from. So if you can do those things, that will help you to manage expectation and to communicate effectively in a way that hopefully the same type of thing will start to spread, where you will start to communicate with people in a way that they just look at you and they realize, like, wow, this person really hears me, or this person really understands me, and that'll start to, in an energetic way, because again, everything is energy. We are all energetic beings. That will, in and of itself, start to change the frequency, right? That frequency then gets a little bit changed as that person spreads that same concept, right? As they can. Because again, it's not as if it's like, oh, I see this once and I'm just going to adopt it into my life and this is just who I am now. It does happen. But there are other things where you see it once, but then it's put on the shelf in your mind. And then it comes back around in 3 months because the universe is trying to say, like, hey, remember this thing that I showed you that you forgot about? I'm going to bring it back up again because it's kind of important. And the universe tends to do that often enough to things that are very important to you. Very important to not only, you, but your development and the purpose in which you're here to fulfill. So in conclusion, I would say one of the last little tidbits of advice I'd have for people is you also have to watch your words. When you're communicating, you have to watch the type of words you're saying to the other person. One of the biggest offenders that I've done myself a lot, and I'm working to transmute, is saying "I know" as a response. I know that it sounds kind of mundane and not really all that powerful. But one of the things I realized is that when you communicate to someone and you respond "I know," you're basically dismissing them. What you should say instead, or at least what I've been trying to adopt, or been adopting, not trying, is the term "I hear you," because it's the same thing. I know is basically just your ego saying, I'm smart, and I want to remind you that I am smart and that you are stupid for thinking that I'm stupid, right? That's essentially what that statement says. So by transmuting that into saying, I hear you, you're not coming at it from an ego standpoint. You're just acknowledging to the other person that they are heard. Simple as that. And things like that, when all done together, often enough over time, hopefully, will help transmute your life just a little bit more. That's what I'm here to do. So anyway, we're fast approaching the 20-minute mark. And that's all I got today for communication and expectation. So again, if you guys have not checked out the Buddy campaign Kickstarter for Terry Mayow's campaign, please go check that out. He's got like 22, 23 hours left. I'm going to put it in the description below, the link, so you guys can just easily find it. And then the link for Confederate Monster is also down below for the IndieGoGo. That one I'm probably going to shut down sometime next week. So make sure that you contribute to that before you miss out. Okay. Other than that, guys, again, I'm going to say this every time. If you want me to talk about a specific topic that I haven't talked about yet, feel free to message me on any of my social media platforms or comment below on this video, and I will do my best to work it into my schedule. Okay. And again, if anybody wants to, see any of my, additional artwork or my behind the scenes stuff, I have a Patreon at patreon.com/DaveSwartzArt. If you want to, check out more of the behind the scenes artwork side of what I do. Okay. So, one last thing. Man, I have so many things going on. One last thing I should say. I am hosting, for those who are in the Southeast Michigan area, I am hosting at the end of June, June 25th and 26th, a backyard art gallery show and live art demonstration. I've been doing, as you know, a lot of these abstract art paintings. So I'm going to finally do a backyard gallery show called the Mushroom Menagerie. So that's going to be on June 25th and 26th at 9 o'clock to midnight each night. You can find the event page on my Facebook page, facebook.com/Dave-Schwartz-Art. And on there, you can buy tickets and get all the other information for the event. It's going to be a super fun time. I got all kinds of psychedelic lights and fun things, and I'm doing my best to build some pretty elaborate decorations. So it should be a fun time. All right. Take care, guys. And I will see you next week for another episode of Dose of Dave.